I, soft skills carry over to anything. I don't care if you never want to do business. I don't. You're gonna negotiate for a car. You're gonna negotiate for a house one day. You're gonna negotiate with your kids. Everything,
That's daily.
everything is a negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
So why not learn the skills as soon as possible? Congratulations, you're 18. You're about to graduate high school. Get started in life. Where do you start? What do you do?
The first thing I'd probably do is learn a skill. I think that it's easy to look back and say that I would have bought more real estate and I would have started younger and all that stuff. When I was 18, I was already in the military. I already had a year in service because I came in when I was 17 and did not have the income to support, but I could have started my learning journey sooner and cared about entrepreneurship and real estate investing a little bit sooner so that when I turned 19, 20 and had the income, the stable income, the credit, then I was able to buy a house. But I think that that's the first thing is start to learn a skill. And at 18, you're trying to figure out how the world works. So it's kind of hard to introduce something new like that. But when I when I wound up coming into real estate, I was, I don't know, 22, 23. And it took me probably 3 years of education before I was ready to start doing anything with it. Maybe a little bit sooner than that, but that you can't skip that period in the beginning where you're just trying to learn the terminology, learn how things work, and develop a strategy. So I think starting that at 18, by the time you turn 21, I mean, you're off to the races. But I mean, you can start that younger. I know for our kids, they're already learning about entrepreneur stuff, in 13, 14. Now our oldest is 18. And they're getting the groundwork. So by the time they're 21, 25, they're going to be golden.
So what if you had to get a job? You just graduated, it's June 1st, you graduated a couple weeks ago. What job would you go for?
I'd probably go for some kind of internship for a financial firm or a bank or something where you're around people that have higher level expertise. I think the mistake that most people make is they go into these lower entry level jobs, working a kitchen, serving tables, busboy, stocking counters, stuff like that, where there's certainly a path to get to the top there, but the top is kind of capped. If you want to go to a place where your earning potential is unlimited, you need to study under people who have unlimited earning potential. And I think nowadays, the Gen Z or Gen Alpha or wherever they're at now, they're all about the e-com and crypto and get rich quick stuff, which, maybe pays off for some. I mean, if you can get in and learn trading or anything like that, then great. But I think learning a skill and learning how money works from the people who are actually doing it, that's probably what makes the most sense.
It's interesting because I think we are approaching it similar, but different. So I wouldn't go to a bank. I wouldn't go to any of your traditional places. I would go, if I went to a traditional place, it would be like a private equity firm. It wouldn't be a bank. It wouldn't be a traditional finance place or anything like that. So that's what I would do if it was more quote unquote traditional.
Mm-hmm.
What I would do if I was 18, Nebraska, a little harder because you have to be 19 to serve alcohol, but I would get two jobs. One, I would sell cars during the day. And the second job I would get is either like at a steak restaurant, something a little nicer, bartending specifically, or a hotel bar like the Hilton downtown or something where business people come in. The reasoning for that is I think sales and psychology are two areas that can help you in life. I don't care whether you are going to school to be a teacher. I don't care like what you're doing. I think those are probably two of the best soft skills to have that aren't taught.
Mm.
Well, I mean, you take an intro to psychology in college, but that's it. Like, there's no sales. We've talked about this before. Like, they don't teach sales at all in college. Like, you get a business degree, and sales aren't taught at all.
Yeah.
So those would be the two things I would, if I wasn't going to college, which for most people I would recommend not. I would try to sell cars and just hit up as many people as you can, build a Rolodex, build those interpersonal skills, the sales skills, and then the bartending at night. Just learn psychology. Just listen to people. Listen to you talked about terminology. Listen to what they're using. Write it down. Go home and Google it, and just interact with people. And I think it's a lost art, especially talking about this generation. Communication. Everything's done via text. Everything's done via Snapchat or something like that. So learning those two skills, I guess technically three: interpersonal communication, sales, and psychology of how people are thinking, how business people are thinking. And I would focus on reading books along those lines as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree with the sales aspect. I think that's a great direction to go. The reason I don't suggest private equity firms and stuff like that is they have a higher barrier to entry, and even their analysts or their lower level employees, they still want some kind of experience. So I would completely agree with going into some kind of sales. And so I mean, talking about where like our oldest went when she turned 18 and graduated, she went and started working for Vector Marketing, selling Cutco. And their sales program is phenomenal. And she, hit the pavement making, 800 cold calls a day, and just started learning how to deal with rejection. And when she does get the foot in the door, people love her. And, she learned the sales aspect, learned the communication. She was a shy kid growing up. And now she's, super outgoing about something she's passionate about. And so I think learning stuff like that, working a bartending job is phenomenal. Like that's what I did when I was that age. And, I met some people that I definitely you talking about it just reignited. I should probably reach out and find out what happened to them. But I think there's so much to the service industry that can teach you those life skills, like having, learning how to upsell, how to communicate, how to make small talk. And I worked at Texas Roadhouse. So I worked corporate environment. There was a lot of really good training structure on how to have those conversations. But the thing that I gathered more than anything, I was at Texas Roadhouse for probably 4 years, was when they had the national marketing director come down and start adjusting certain things on the tables. And one of the things she did was take the menus and flip them upside down. And I always wondered, like, what are you doing? Like, that doesn't make any sense. And everyone else was just like, all right, this is dumb. We'll do it anyways. But I, being inquisitive, started following her around, asking like, okay, so why are we doing this? And so she started explaining the psychology of, when things are upside down, it calls people's attention because it's out of place. And when you put things, even having the ketchup on the right and the mustard on the left and the salt on the right and the pepper on the left, and having, all these things matter that people normally overlook. And so when you start to notice those subtle differences, the psychology of sales in general is just, it's a whole world that most of us will never understand. So I completely agree. I think that's a great avenue.
Yeah, it's we talked on a previous podcast about Trump and his book, what's it, Art of the Deal or something like that. Mm-hmm. And that's really what he uses leverage in psychology to get people to do what he wants, if you will. Yeah, but it's a skill that he learned over time by doing deal after deal after deal. And I remember talking to somebody recently, and they're like, this guy flew in. I think he might actually have been from New York, but they were talking about him, and he's trying to do some kind of business deal in Omaha area, actually, like kind of between my house and your house. And they could tell me what it was, but they were saying how this dude was a shark. and just his experience. Like, he's a soft-spoken guy, but when he speaks, like, you can tell that he's done this quite a few times. So it's just interesting hearing somebody else. Like I said, I didn't meet the guy, I don't know the guy, but just hear them talking about this deal that this dude flew in to try to negotiate. And I don't know if he's building an apartment building, I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's just real interesting. Just them talking about the psychology of him.
Yeah, it's funny to me when people use the term shark and they say it like a derogatory term and it's meant to be intimidating. And like, I get excited about that, just to be in their presence and see how they operate. I mean, I would love to pick up skills from people that are skilled negotiators. And I think it's a craft, negotiating and understanding the psychology of business is something that is forever changing, and you can always improve your skills. Like, there's limitless education opportunities in those two fields.
What do you mean?
In the psychology of business and negotiation. I know you got a ton of books here on negotiations, and I still am picking up things. And I think with negotiation, people think you're either a good negotiator or you're not. And I look at all these negotiating books, and everyone has their own strategy. Like, some are start with no, and some are getting to yes, and start with objections, and some people are lead them down the path. It's I think there's so many different aspects, and just plug and play and see what works. And
do you feel like they are all saying something different, or do you feel like they're all saying the same thing?
I think they're all saying something different.
See, I
think they're following similar principles, but in a different direction. And the most drastic example is those two different books that says start with no. And people say that it's much easier to get a no than it is to yes. And then other people say that if you can get people nodding with you and you say two things that they're going to agree with and they'll say yes to, which is the Tony Robbins model of, who's happy to be here? Yes. Who wants, whatever? Yes. Okay, so here's my package. And they've already said yes twice, so it's assuming that they're going to say the third yes. But the complete polar opposite is people that say it's much easier to get a no, where they use things like, would you be opposed to hearing my pitch? And because it's easier, because no feels like a protective word, and they say, well, no, I'm not opposed. And that's more of the, oh gosh, can't remember his name now, but he's a real estate coach. And he talks about leading with no objectives. So I think they're following the same framework, just they're trying to get to here, going two different paths to get here.
Yeah, I guess I can see it, but I think, at this end of the day, maybe I'm just looking at the objective at the end and focusing on that. So, but yeah, I just, it's funny we're talking about this because I just ordered this weekend, Never Split the Difference. Mm-hmm. So I've had it on Audible. Mm. I have the book somewhere around here, but I got books scattered throughout like 5 different spots, and so I can't find it. Mm. And so I reordered it to reread it. It's just going back and revisiting something.
Yeah.
And one thing I really like about that book, and it stuck out to me, Never Split the Difference. He's saying, like, every time you split the difference, like my wife, she wants me to wear brown shoes and I want to wear black shoes. You split the difference. Now you're walking out with one brown shoe and one black shoe.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And that's how I was going back and I listened to a podcast episode that you were speaking, and you said,
this must have been most of the episode.
It was most you were speaking, you said something about, like, you put an offer in, they have an offer at 300, you go into 250 to land at 275.
Yeah,
and that's the splitting the difference thing. And this book is Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
So it's a good book. So.
Yeah, no, I think that people treat real estate negotiations like car sales negotiations, but people don't like going to buy a car. I've never talked to someone who says, I enjoy the process of going to buy a car.
So it's funny. Valerie's been hinting at buying a new car, and I just want to go just for the negotiations. I just want to be that guy. Mm-hmm. And because now that I've read more and studied more on it and just see the psychology of these car salesmen, and I don't want to knock all car salesmen with this, but a lot of them aren't very good.
No, 80-20.
And so I want to go to 10 different dealerships. I want to go, what's the big one that has all the the BMWs, the Mercedes, the
No, I don't know.
it's right off from Dodge, like 160. Anyhow, they sell a lot of luxury ones. They Land Rover, anyhow, Onyx.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go there
Just see how they're
and see how theirs is compared to
Yeah.
Honda or something like that. Something that's more entry level.
Yeah, there's a couple guys on social media that they live stream their calls helping people find cars. I think it would make a phenomenal business. I think there should be some kind of buyer agency for car buying. Just the people who are experts doing it all the time can easily take advantage of the unknowing person who only buys a car once every 3 to 5 years. And I love the negotiating part, but I don't like the rest of it. So, but
I mean, just the process of buying a car.
Yeah. I mean, I never trust what they're saying, and it's always like I mean, for example, we were looking at cars a couple of years ago, and I don't even remember what we were looking at, but we went to this dealership, had a car that was priced, a little bit high, maybe 2,000 over what MSRP should have been, and we test drive it. Everything's good. I brought my own comps, and I showed them this. This is what I believe that it should be worth, and at that point, they had this arrogance of these cars are scarce, and so they weren't budging at all. It's okay. Well, I don't want to pay that. So is there any agreement that we can come to? And they did let me go talk to my manager. Came back and well, we were able to take $200 off, and so okay. Well, thank you for your time. We get up to leave, and they're like, oh well, let's see what else we can do to bring that price down. And I said, I want this price. I want the warranty. I want this, that, and the other. And so what they did is they came back and they're like, all right, we got the price down to where you want it, and basically just struck out the warranty. And I said, okay, but now I'm losing things to save the money. And they're like, well, no, your payment's going to be lower. And I was like, okay, but now I'm not getting what I want. And so we went back and forth. And normally I'm pretty good about keeping an even head in those conversations. But when they get to the point where I can tell they're just trying to bully you into an answer, then I'm walking out the door.
So I don't remember what year this was. It was when Bella and I first got married. So probably into 2012. We needed a new car. Anyhow, so we went to the dealership. She had just bought a new car, but it was a Dodge Cavalier, and they were getting rid of them. They were coming out with the Dart that year or the next year, and they were just doing this blowout sale. And so she bought a brand new car for 10, 11,000, something like that. Like literally brand new. It was half of MSRP or something like that. So, but I didn't like it. It was crap. Like it had a whole bunch of blind spots. We were having kids. It wasn't a good car, and for our needs at least. And so we went to Kia. So we're looking at the Kia Optima, and it was like December 30th, December 31st, end of the year. And they were offering a free iPad with if you purchased a vehicle by the end of the year. And so we go and negotiate this deal, and it was a pretty solid deal. Matter of fact, like I said, Valerie paid like 10, 11 grand for this car. We had paid it off in that before we had going to trade in. I think they gave her 15 for the trade in. So we made like 3-4 grand.
That's unheard of.
Yeah. Like when she bought this car, she had got a smoking deal. And when we sold the car, we got an even better deal. But we had gotten, quote unquote, such a good deal from this dealership. They came to Valerie, like I was in the bathroom. And they're like, hey, can you sign this piece of paper waiving the iPad? And I came out, she's like, hey, I signed this thing saying we're not going to get the iPad. I was like, we had already negotiated the deal. This was part of the deal. And she signed it away. I was so pissed. So iPads were relatively new at the time. Yeah. And I was like, I wanted an iPad.
Well, they just saved 10% right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what an iPad cost then, but yeah, so it was.
Oh man, that's funny.
That was
and it's those things. It's the little sliminess that just makes a bad name for the whole industry. And that's why you see like Tesla has removed the salesperson aspect altogether. And whether and the thing is, I think with
a lot of people have done that, CarMax and a lot of used cars, like the price of the price.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think have you seen that Amazon has launched their car buying platform?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can buy and sell cars on Amazon now. I don't know how they're doing with shipping and all that stuff. Like if they can do free shipping, then
Kind of like eBay.
kind of like eBay, but you're buying certified pre-owned or new cars on Amazon. Yeah,
Interesting.
it's going to be interesting. And rumor pool, I'm not that I have an inside scoop, but that they're going to be trying to roll this out for real estate too, and they're going to start buying and sell. You're going to buy and sell a house on Amazon, and then I'm guarantee what's coming next is lending, and who knows when it makes it to the investing sphere. They might have hard money someday, but yeah. So I think things like that are revolutionizing the industry, something that's been around for 100 years, and people are just tired of it. And I mean, every industry goes through these kinds of cycles. You look at the restaurant industry, everywhere the restaurant industry is suffering. And it's not because people stopped eating. It's because the service quality has been so degraded since COVID. And it's so hard to retain people.
So Valor and I's birthday's the same day. So went out to a newer steak restaurant in Omaha for our birthday. And a lot of times I'll over tip, like if the service is good. And the food was all right. Service was, I thought, for what's supposed to be an upscale restaurant, it was horrible. Like, they have the waiter that comes and takes your drink order, and then they have the water person, and then they have you had all these people.
Mm-hmm.
None of them were good. The drink guy never came back. Like he came, took our drink orders, which, in my opinion, took forever. We didn't get water right away. The drink guy never came back. Like we finished our first drink. Mm-hmm. He never came back. So they lost sales.
And they just have no enthusiasm.
Yeah. It's just like.
It's a thing that they show up to do. It's like they treat it like a cubicle job. And there needs to be some, positive demeanor because it's an experience, type of business. And I think that the other thing that's ruined it is the tip culture in all the non-service based industries. Like if I'm going to Panera and I'm standing up to put my own order in and you flip around a tip screen, I'm not tipping.
Starbucks is what started
that.
Oh
gosh, it drives me nuts. Like, there's most places now that you don't even talk to anyone. You just go put in your own order and you all but make the food for yourself and then they ask for a tip.
Yeah. Like, it's out of control.
It's crazy. And the fact that so many people are making, spoof videos on social media about, the mailman delivering mail and then he flips around a tip screen. I've done it a couple times. I don't even remember what it was. I think I was at an event or something and I just had a screenshot of that tip screen and someone like scanned my ticket and then I flip around the tip screen. And it gets a laugh out of people, but it's the ridiculousness of it. Yeah. And whereas the tip industry used to be just, my wife always says to ensure prompt service, right? And it's based on the level of experience that you give someone.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I don't know the exact price, but a lot of bartenders and servers, they're getting paid like $213 or something. It's low.
Well, in some states, and
I don't know what it is in Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska it's typically higher. They sometimes get close to minimum wage, which everything's like
I think Louisiana
$12-13.
Yeah, in Louisiana it's like $2.
Yeah, when I started, it was $3.27. I was getting
maybe it's $3. Yeah.
But that was the minimum wage in New Hampshire at the time, and that not minimum wage. That was the minimum for serving. But the minimum wage was $7.25, and so if you didn't at least make that with your tips, then they had to pay. Yeah, they had to pay you. But if you're not making that much serving, you probably don't belong serving. So,
yeah, I mean that's what tipping's for. And being overseas, like I like not having a tip. Mm-hmm. Like, let me know what this food's going to cost.
Yeah,
and you either have good service or you don't. Mm. You pay the people accordingly to how they work. And if you have bad service and you have bad waiters and waitresses, I don't have to come back.
One thing that I would love to see here in the States is transparency on tips, because there's a lot of places, not the big corporate ones, but sometimes there's mom and pops where they take all the tips and they pool it. And they either take all the tips and they give it to all the servers and bartenders equally, or the owner keeps all the tips and just pays them an hourly rate. And I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's, well, being in the industry, you learn it a lot, and you learn the places that do that, and then you wonder why they have trouble, retaining staff. So I don't think that's right. I don't think it's legal, but that's not this conversation. So
Yeah, I was about to say we got off on tangent, but
yeah, I mean, I think as far as learning skills and negotiation, I think is a phenomenal one to learn. One of the best things that I've learned, that I've done to continually improve my negotiating skills, is the thing that constantly gets in the way is egos, whether it's a seller's ego, a buyer's ego, the brokers in between ego, um, and it can kill a lot of deals. And so, I've had many, many instances where I have a buyer that says, I need to buy it at this. It only makes sense at this. Maybe they're being a little bit subjective, but primarily I work with buyers that are more objective about investing, and they have a set return they need to make. And if they underwrite a property and they say they need this, and that's that. They're not going to overpay. It's not like buying a single family house where you can overpay by 10,000, you paid off over 30 years. The numbers are the numbers. When I know that they're walking away from a deal, then I'll still have the conversation with them and see what they're willing to budge. And that's where you start throwing those anchors in and say, we're negotiating a deal at $1 million, and this buyer's hung up on 980,000 and they're hung up on $1 million. And there's a $20,000 delta. That's what, 0.5%? Like it's not a significant amount to the deal. At that point, then you realize that it's egos. And so then you start trying to find a way to bridge that gap a little bit, or throw in significant price anchors to say, if I can get this deal here, would you still do it, buyer? And if they say no, then they'll walk away. And if the seller's willing to concede, then I'll usually find another buyer, because I'm like, I just negotiated a great deal. We're not going to let this one slip. And so I think continuing the conversation and trying to find mutually beneficial terms, the buyer's not always going to be interested, but having those conversations and learning, where you push too hard. And I think the best advice that I've gotten is that the person that holds all the power in negotiation is the one who's willing to walk away. And when you're willing to walk away, then, I mean, you can negotiate the best terms possible. And I always get the buyer's permission and say, I'm going to try and negotiate this. Are you, okay with that? And they all sign off on it. But it's just not giving up on the negotiation too early. I think people constantly will be like, we're at 980,000 and they want to be at $1 million. They say no. Okay, well, let's go find another one. And then you miss out on the opportunity to grow.
So speaking of opportunity, back to the initial question. We both answered it very similar in sales, psychology, all that. Why sales? Why psychology? Why did you choose that as a career path for 18-year-old Tanner?
Yeah, well, because I've tried it all. I've done a little bit of everything, and I figured out which ones have benefited me the most. And
How?
I mean, I think in the skills that I learned in those industries that are more applicable to a variety of different industries, I got from those entry-level positions. Whereas there's other positions that kind of have a narrow pathway where you're only really learning a skill that's applicable to that industry. For example, I did body work for a long time. I did exhaust work. It's a good skill to learn. You can make a lot of money, but I had absolutely no business ownership skills. Had my boss said, "Hey, I'll sell you my business," I would not have known the first thing in negotiating that. I wouldn't have known how to value a business. None of that would have mattered. I didn't understand how money worked. And so I had a skill, but that skill limited me to be a solo entrepreneur at best for the rest of my life. Whereas going into this industry, into sales, marketing, psychology, business, finance, learning that side of things, doesn't matter what industry you're in, it's all applicable. So, I mean, I can look at sales, finance, business psychology, and apply that to the auto restoration business.
So what I hear you saying is soft skills are worth more than hard skills.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the hard skills are important, and we're always going to need people that do that. But I mean, I've told my kids that, if they're going to go to college, then I highly recommend they take business classes and understand business, because if they want to go be a hairstylist, or they want to go, what's the, not endocrine, where they do, I don't know, one of those other beauty things. That's, our oldest is looking into that, into that stuff now. And as you know, it's not as simple as you just go work for someone else. You still have to run your own business. And I think that learning marketing and sales and communication, all those things apply to each one of those industries. And if one of my kids wants to go start a lawn mowing business, they need to understand all the other aspects, not just how to mow a lawn. And so that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that those soft skills are applicable. So it's learn the soft skills and then, build the business or work for someone else.
So it's funny. I don't know how much I've said on the podcast, but in the process of buying a plumbing company, and I've probably been to 5 banks, 5 lenders on this. And one of the first questions they always ask me, what experience do you have running or in plumbing? Do you have some experience? My first thought, I don't say it, but my first thought is, what does a plumber know about running a business? Like, they're 2 totally different things. And just because you could do plumbing, HVAC, electrical, cut hair, whatever it is, doesn't mean that you have the soft skills, the accounting skills, the marketing skills, the going out and getting payroll or insurance. Like, you have to know how to do that. Like, just because I can change a P-trap on a sink, or put in a garbage disposal, or dig up somebody's front yard and redo the main, doesn't mean that you can do all the other things. And it just cracks me up that.
So do you give them that objection? You remember the Henry Ford example?
I know what you're talking about. No, because I just don't want to become argumentative with a bank where I'm asking them for a sizable
It's all
loan.
part of the negotiations. I love it. But the Henry Ford thing that I'm talking about, I think we've mentioned it before in the podcast, but where he's being questioned, I don't remember if it was by the FBI or something.
It was, I don't remember who.
Or maybe it was
like
SEC, something about his investors. But they were questioning his competency. And so they had someone sitting down asking him all these technical questions about how an engine works and how the whole car is built. And he said something along the lines of, you see that button right there? That button connects me to all the experts in this office that know those answers. So I don't need to know those answers. And that's my answer to that objection every single time, is that I don't need to know about plumbing, because I'm a smart enough business owner to surround myself with people that are experts in that.
Yeah, I find it hilarious that I don't know, my mom's going to listen to this, but she did the same thing to me. Like, what do you know about plumbing? Just help me look at these, because my mom was an accountant, so I had her look at the past 3 years P&L with me, just in case I missed something. I want to.
No, that's awesome.
Make sure I had all the financial.
Verify.
Yeah, like, I was smart enough to go to my mom, who did corporate accounting for 30 years, 50 years. I don't know how long she did it for, but it wasn't 50 years. But it's not rocket science. Like, who can you hire? I met with the owner. We went to lunch, the guy buying it from, and he's staying on as part owner, and he was buying a portion of the company. But he was talking to me about kind of the plans and stuff. And I told him, I said, I look at this as a leadership challenge. We're coming in, we're changing things. These people have been working in this business. There's 12 employees. They've all been doing things a certain way for a certain amount of time. And we're throwing a grenade into their lives. I mean, realistically. And so I don't want to go in and change everything minute one, day one. Like, it's going to be leadership. You gotta build relationships with these people before you go in, and you have to lead with value, just like in anything. Lead with value, and then people will follow. And so that's kind of.
So when you hear those questions, or hear those objections, or hear the same objection coming time and time and time again, What are you telling yourself to maintain confidence to keep moving forward on it?
I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant or anything. It's not hard. Just keep doing the same. Just keep showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you mess up, you learn from your mistakes and keep moving forward. Like, I've done hard things before in life, and I've always come out the other side, even if I messed up, better because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So just don't be scared to screw up, I guess is the...
But I mean, the reality of it is screw ups do happen. And I think that the reason I'm asking that is because as you move up into every level, when you put your first earnest deposit down, it was probably the most amount of money you've ever had to deposit into one thing at a time, outside of buying a vehicle, buying your own house. And then the first time you close on a property is the largest debt that you've ever had. And then, moving on, and now where you're making $1 million decisions. And, I'm doing the same thing. I'm looking at a business right now that's, in the same ballpark, between $2 and $3 million. And I'm weighing the pros and cons of, if what is my downside risk of this? And can I live with that? If the worst case scenario happens, can I still feed my family? Are they going to foreclose on my house? Like what is my ultimate risk? And then what is the upside potential? And the people who make the smartest decisions, you look at, Warren Buffett, all he does is asymmetrical risk, right? Is he finds things with much higher upside and limited downside, if any downside at all. And so the best stock trading strategy that I've seen is putting stop limits on 15% downside and letting your winners ride. I've never tried it. I'd love to, just to see how it works in action. But that's all that this business ownership and investing is protecting your downside.
So what you're saying is, for the stock is, I buy stock for $100. Mm-hmm. At $85, it automatically sells.
Yeah. Yeah. And if it's going up, let it ride. Let it keep going. And like I said, I don't know how that plays out in the long term, but I can understand, especially talking about the psychology, when people see their stocks start dipping, and then, they see it dip 25% and they're like, gosh, no, it'll come back. Let me double down. And then, I'll lower my cost, or what's the
dollar cost averaging.
Dollar cost average. Yeah. I'll lower my average, and then it keeps dropping down, and then it's at 50. And now they're like, oh, well, this is going to be a great swing up. But what people don't realize is when a stock has a 50% decline, what does it need to get back to where it was? 100%. And it's much harder to get a 100% increase than it is to get a 50% decrease. So sometimes when things are falling down that fast, it's a falling knife, and exiting early is better. They don't want to be wrong, because if that stock keeps plummeting, then you have to admit that you were wrong or sell for a massive loss. And that's why people have balanced or losing portfolios. I mean, I did it even when I was younger. I started doing stock investing when I was really young, and I would do that exact same strategy, the wrong strategy. And I'd feel like I'm making all this money because I'm making all these trades. And then I get my not 1099, 1097C or whatever it is at the end of the year, and I'd see negative $15. I'm like, what the heck? Like I did all these trades and I had a few really good winners, but how much I lost by the ones that I just kept sinking to the bottom, it averages out to nothing. Like, you're better off just parking your money in a savings account, which is saying something.
Yeah. I've said I'm not a huge fan of the stock market. I'm a invest and forget it stock market person. Mm-hmm. I used to buy individual shares and, or stocks and, certain companies, but the more research I've done, I think a set and forget it mentality is the best. Mm-hmm. I'm actually talking to two guys. They work for a financial firm. One's a partner in it, and the other one's a worker in it, about coming on here and talking about it from they're both Christian, so kind of from a Christian standpoint, and from as a financial person. I told them I come from a different viewpoint, and so kind of I'd love love the argument, I guess, of it, and or
Yeah,
different
discussion.
viewpoints. Yeah,
Absolutely.
discussion of it. Like no matter what, you're better off doing something than doing nothing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I mean, I've used the analogy before, but it's like when your car breaks down and you're just sitting there stuck. Like you want to get anywhere, you got to get some momentum. You start pushing that vehicle. The more you push it, the easier it gets to roll.
yeah. So I want to circle back, kind of something you said early on. We were talking about psychology of money or psychology of business, um, soft skills, stuff like that. Negotiation was a big one. You mentioned books.
Hmm.
I specifically called out Never Split the Difference. Something we haven't done on here. I mean, we've talked about books, but if someone wanted to learn negotiation or sales, what books would you recommend?
Yeah, I've mentioned a few of them. I think Never Split the Difference is probably the best one that I've read. And especially if I can read a book and then go on YouTube and find a lot of supplementary content from the author. And Chris Voss has a ton of content out there that you can use to. He has practical, practical steps for how to implement those things. It's not just a informational book, take it and run. So I like those kinds of things. Starting was it getting to yes, starting with no. Those kinds of things. Anything around the communication and building rapport and stuff like that, I think are extremely helpful, because that's the biggest thing I think in negotiation is that people can take it too competitive. They can take a competitive approach and not focus on the important part, which is building the relationship. Because you build a relationship, then there's no conversation to be had.
So I got a kind of funny story along those lines. So Alyssa, my oldest, this is a couple years ago. I just read Never Split the Difference for the first time.
Oh, and you got to walk around mirroring everyone, right?
So I was looking, she must have been 15 at the time. She'd be turning 16 soon, within like 6 months. So we started looking for cars for her. And I told Valerie, I said, I'm not spending over $5,000 on a car for a teenager that's going to wreck it. Or at least break it, in some way, shape, or form. And so that was our limit, $5,000. So we started looking. This is a couple of years ago, so COVID pricing still kind of high. And she's like, we're never going to find one. I was like, we will. Like, we have 6 months to find a car. So we're looking, and finally find one that I'm interested in. And like I said, I just finished this book. And so I meet the guy, and I don't remember what he wanted, but he wanted, we'll call it like $4,500 for this car. And so I started negotiating with him, and he brings it down. And then I'm like, negotiate a little bit more. He brings it down a little bit more. It got to the point that I got this guy down so far that I felt bad. And I just stopped negotiating. I was like, okay, I'll pay that. And I know I could have got it down to a few $100s more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it was probably around 40 something that he wanted. And I think I got it down to like 35, 37, something like that. Mm-hmm. I probably could have got it down to 32.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt bad doing it. Like, I was like, this car's worth it at this point. Like, everybody always marks the car up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he only wanted 25 for it, so he thought he got you.
He might have. He might have. So what happened was he had bought it, like someone had wrecked into him or something like that. He didn't want to have a rental for so much. So the insurance company gave him X amount of dollars. So he bought a car instead of doing a rental. And so he just wanted his money back. And I think he said he paid like $4 for it. And then I got him a little below that. Anyhow, like I was just like, he was still making money because the insurance company had paid for it. Yeah. So that was why he was willing to probably sell it a little bit cheaper. But yeah, I don't know. It was interesting because I would just used a lot of the techniques in there.
Yeah. Well, that's why I made the joke of mirroring, is I feel like after reading that book, every single time you just start mirroring, just because he talks about in the book, like in real practice, even someone who knows the book still will react to using the principles in the book. And mirroring is like repeating the last 3 words of what someone said in an inquisitive way.
I saw an interview, or he was talking somewhere. I think he was doing a training, and they recorded it, and it was on YouTube. He was talking about being out on a boat with, it was him, his son, and one of his employees or something like that. And I think the employee might have been asking him for a raise, or I don't know exactly what it was, but he just kept mirroring Chris Voss. And this is like, he's learned everything from him.
Yeah.
And he's sitting there and just going on for like 10, 15 minutes. Like he's using all of his own psychology against him. Finally, his son just like busts out laughing. He's like, "Dad, have you not realized what he's been doing to you for the last 15 minutes?"
Yeah.
And then finally it's...
But even in conversations, like we talked before about the, what was it, Sam Walton? When he went to Brazil because this small company was just firing out requests to all these big American companies to try and gain, wisdom for them because they were starting a chain in Brazil. And so they invited Sam Walton out, and he actually showed up. And part of the story is he wound up in jail. So, but he kept on just asking them questions, and they said that he was the most interesting man to talk to but then they realized at the end of it that they didn't get anything from him. And
all he did was ask about them.
All he did was ask about them. And the same with, people like Warren Buffett, is they're very inquisitive and they believe that they can gain knowledge from everyone. And just as the side story, he wound up in jail because he was walking around one of their supermarkets laying down on the ground, and he was trying to use his body because he didn't have a yardstick or a measuring tape, using his body to measure the width of the aisles because he was fascinated with every aspect of how they ran their business. And the security thought the police thought it was strange, so they put him in jail, and he was late to the meeting with these Brazilian, business owners. And I haven't read his book yet. This is all that I've heard third party through podcasts and stuff, but it's just fascinating. So
yeah, I haven't read anything on him. So,
but I think we went pretty in depth on this.
Yeah.
So I think the stuff that we leave with is developing those soft skills, find something that you're passionate about, and, gain as much knowledge as you can at a young age.
Yeah. Soft skills carry over to anything. I don't care if you never want to do business. You're going to negotiate for a car. You're going to negotiate for a house one day. You're going to negotiate with your kids. Everything.
That's daily.
Everything is a negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
So why not learn the skills as soon as possible?
Absolutely.
So
I think that's a wrap.
If you like this, like it, subscribe, something on YouTube. So we finally went over 100 subscribers this weekend. So keep going. So appreciate it.
All right.